Hi, team, and welcome to episode 8 of the Health is Wealth podcast. And yeah, I hope you're getting lots of value from these guys. And so today, what we thought would be appropriate would be to combine today's podcast with the challenge, which is about protein. And I'm sure a majority of you know the importance of a high protein diet. And so what we're going to do, we're going to be discussing strategies, how to increase that protein over the day, different options like protein options that's going to help get there. But what I'd like to do is just get into the importance of protein and the benefits, which is huge. Especially, if the goal is for fat loss. For fat loss, it's going to help you satiety. It's going to help you feel fuller for longer. Meaning it's got the highest thermic effect of any other food. Protein requires more energy to digest, to absorb and process compared to fats and carbohydrates, but also we've got to look at it from a point of view that if we are in a calorie deficit and we the goal is, obviously if you're in a calorie deficit, the goal would be to lose weight, but how that's going to help, it's going to preserve muscle mass, because a lot of people don't know this, but like as we age, we lose muscle mass.
Hmm.
Anything around about 8 to 12% every year. Muscle is how much muscle mass you will lose unless we're using the muscles and we have got a high protein diet. So as we know, protein will support muscle growth and repair. Like I mentioned, it's going to help aid in fat loss. It's going to preserve lean muscle mass during that fat loss phase. Also, it's really beneficial for bone health and enhancing metabolic health as well. As alongside, balancing, hormonal balance as well, and boosting that immune system. So I'm going to pass you on to John. So, John, what I'd like you to do, if you're open to this, and guys, by the way, we have not discussed anything about this podcast. We've literally come on, said hi, how you doing,
Going on the fly.
and gone straight into it. So I'm putting these two guys, these two legends, basically on the spot, straight into it, So bear with us, and I'm sure. So, John, let's go back to when you first started your journey with us at evidence-based coaching. And, obviously your calories were set, your protein was set. How did you find getting to that protein goal that we originally set for you, which was high, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was at first, and this was due to my own lack of education. I was kind of like, okay, 200 grams of protein. No problem, right? No problem. And then when I actually started to measure that amount in a daily basis, I was like, wow, I have probably been getting a good 40 to 60 grams of protein a day prior to this program. And the rest of my day was filled with carbs and fats. So my first reaction was this is hard, and it's also really educational in terms of understanding what I was ingesting prior to the program.
Yeah. Okay. And Greg, what about yourself? Let's look at, ways in how you like plan your protein intake, Greg. How do you ensure that you're getting enough protein over the day?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say that similar to John as a starting point, when I first started the program, I was definitely low on protein intake. You know, if I look at, you know, even kind of the first 6 months that I was on the program, my focus personally, just because it was like old bad habits, was to try to hit my overall calorie target, but I didn't really buy into the importance of the macro kind of breakdown, and didn't necessarily see a whole lot of results in that time period for that and a couple of other reasons. But once I got really serious about the protein intake and being more strict in terms of measuring things and so on, that's really where then I saw like some really amazing results in terms of weight loss, in terms of, you know, other types of things as well. In terms of Craig's specific question, you know, I think this goes back to the importance of logging, you know, kind of food, just because, you know, we'll probably end up talking about different protein sources and things like that, you know, over the course of the call. But I've also found that not all of them are created equal, right? So it's like you can look at two different Greek yogurts, for example, and they could actually have like relatively different, you know, protein content, you know, relative to calories, for example, because, you know, some yogurts have a bunch of other stuff, you know, kind of mixed into them and things like that, or, you know, and so on. And so I found that, you know, logging everything in MyFitnessPal, you know, has been really important to me. As time has gone on, I have gained some intuition around this and so on, but I'll continue to just kind of log things, and I'll look at MyFitnessPal multiple times during the day, and in particular sort of say both where am I overall in terms of overall calories, but more specifically like where am I on protein, you know, relative trying to hit my target. And then within that, have a couple of, you know, kind of go-to options at the ready, or at least have some strategies in terms of how I'm going to close that gap. But I also try to space it out throughout the entire day. So, you know, if like you, in my case, my target is give or take 180 grams at the moment. You're not, at least from what I understand from Craig, he could get into it in more detail. Like you probably don't want to have more than say 50 grams in one sitting. And so if you kind of look at that, then, you know, even if I had 50 grams across 3 meals, you know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I'm still only at 150. To get to 180, that sort of implies that, you know, I need to be having some protein-based kind of snacks, you know, kind of in between, in terms of then still getting to that target. So, so that's why I try to be mindful about kind of planning it out and kind of spacing it out, and then also thinking about my day, because depending on my day and how much control I have over what's going to happen at certain meals, I may front load that a bit more so that I end up hitting my protein. Let's just say that I'm going out to dinner and I know that whatever we're going to be doing for dinner, like it may be harder to get a lot of protein at that meal. I'll then like front load things a bit, go protein heavy with, you know, breakfast and lunch and some snacks. And so then I have space at dinner so that I can be more carb and fat heavy, as an example. So
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for that, Greg. And John, so how do you plan your day? You know, like, do you plan it in advance to get closer to that protein goal, or is it basically just as you go? You know, each day, like breakfast, add breakfast into MyFitnessPal, add a snack when you're having a snack, or do you try and like plan it ahead of time to you know, to get closer to the goal? You know,
Yeah,
what's your strategy at the moment, John?
yeah, good question. I particularly in the beginning, I really needed to plan several days in advance. So what I would do is I set aside Sundays and Wednesdays for meal planning and meal preparation. And I find it helpful personally if I log it the day prior, right? So I find that if that it just kind of causes me to stay that much more on track. It causes me to I'll set alarms, you know, around it, and just plan out my day in advance. When I'm not doing that, you know, and I'm not saying, okay, consciously making an effort to say, okay, I'm going to hit this particular target on meal 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I kind of just let it to chance, I will find that I become subject to my environment and more subject to go off the rails, so to speak. Like if I'm hungry, and by off the rails, I just mean not really hitting my goal for that day, not anything too tremendous, but at the same time, I find that a little bit of planning in advance, on a couple of days of the week, combined with a little bit of pre-logging, really helps me hit my goals.
Excellent. Thanks, John. And so how much protein do we need? And this is a question I do get asked a lot, quite often. Like the people will come to me, whether I'm in the gym, Craig, how much protein should I be having? A lot of this is goal dependent. Now, what I mean by that, so if you're in a fat loss phase of the program, then your protein will be on the higher range. Now, on what we aim for as a rule of thumb is 0.7 to 1.2 gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. So what we would do if we were in a fat loss phase, we would go to the higher end. Anywhere around about one gram per pound is usually sufficient, and when we're in a muscle gaining phase where we need more calories pushing from carbohydrates, then we would go with the lower end, because what's going to happen to gain muscle, we need to be in a caloric surplus as such, so if we've got a high protein, if like go target, when we're in a surplus, we're going to get full a lot quicker. And this is the benefits of protein. This is why we would have it higher on when we're in that fat loss phase compared to. So what sources of protein, let's look at when it comes to lean pieces of protein, meat, like chicken breast, turkey breast, lean beef. And the thing is as well, with our approach that we use with our clients, we've got some flexibility here as well. So we can get creative with the foods, whether it's something like a chicken curry, whether it's whether you're putting a rub on the chicken breast, some Cajun spices or something like that. But, in my opinion, my personal opinion, for what I recommend to my clients is try planning it ahead of time. By getting, like Greg said, a good serving of protein with that first meal is going to really help you and set you up for the day. Like I say, it's going to make you feel fuller for longer from breakfast till your next meal. But getting that larger amount, that on that first meal is really going to help throughout the rest of the day when you're setting up your protein. So when it comes to like 100 gram of chicken breast is around about, anywhere between 25 and 30 grams of protein. So what you'll see this when you put it into MyFitnessPal. But my practice, what I use with myself as well, is I plan my full day. I will put my protein in first for the full day, and then me additional foods, that have me carbohydrate source, my vegetables, the protein will have fats in there as well. So it's something to be careful on. If you're tracking all 3 macros, or if you just started, it's usually protein and calories to begin with. But when it comes to fish, there's different sources that we can use that you'll be able to pack and take with you for work, like a lot of the foods, like tuna, salmon, shrimp, things like that, salads as well. And the reason why I'm saying this, because I know a lot of you guys do eat out a lot on a lunchtime and things, which there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but ultimately, taking your own food, number one, you're going to save money. Number two, you're going to have a better idea of the portion sizes in general, and talking to quite a lot of clients lately, the protein is one of the biggest struggles for people because of how it's making you feel full for longer, if that makes sense. So by spreading your food out over more meals over the day, let's say three main meals, let's say your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner, and let's say two snacks, which could be something like a protein shake, some Greek yogurt, some cottage cheese. These are all ideas that you can include within your diet that's going to help get that protein up. Things like breakfast, eggs, turkey bacon, if you have a good hit at breakfast, it's going to be a lot easier for you to hit that goal over the day. When it comes to what I did do, I put together something like what a day's eating looks like for me. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to share my food and show you how I get 240 grams of protein over the day. As you can see, my first meal here, there's a good serving round about 55 grams of protein with my first meal. And then, which is oatmeal, a couple of scoops of protein, some nut butter, some blueberries. And what you will notice with every meal as well, I've either got fruit or vegetables with it. So we've got to make sure that we're getting that fiber in as well for digestion and gut health. But then meal two, this is usually my pre-workout because what that is, slow-acting carbohydrates is going to give me energy. I've got my nut butter on top for the fats. It's going to give me energy as well. It's again because it's slow releasing fats. It takes a lot longer to digest fats and proteins than it does carbohydrates, if that makes sense. Then we've got the chicken, we've got rice, we've got pineapple. My meal after that is usually an omelette or some scrambled eggs and egg whites with some spinach in there and some green beans. And then we've got some ground beef here, lean beef, with some green beans, some rice in here for the carbohydrates. And then my last meal of the day is always Greek yogurt with a scoop of protein in there. We've got the blueberries, we've got some nut butter, and that is basically 240 grams of protein over the day. So, John, what type of sources protein is your go-to, at this point, at the moment? Where do you usually source your protein from? Is it?
Yep.
Well, I'll let you do the talk.
No, yeah. First of all, you provided me with a hack a couple years ago that I swear by on a daily basis. I actually take egg whites and I'll say crack an egg and then mix a certain amount of egg whites into it to create like a pretty large scramble. And then I'll add veggies and things like that. But I found that maybe just one egg will do it along with a bunch of egg whites. That's for me, that's a go-to source of protein. Number two, I figured I would have gotten sick of it by now, but I am a huge cottage cheese fan. A lot of people are not. I will eat a tremendous amount of cottage cheese on a daily basis. And I also some people might not prefer that much salt. I actually prefer the salt to hydrate, my muscles for my lifts. But those are my main sources. I would say not primarily main sources, but I also have, of course, I will have chicken, I will have fish, I will have lunch meats and other things. Some other discoveries as well. A bagel, for instance, the average bagel, which I like to have on a regular basis. I saw that in your meal plan there for the day. An average bagel will contain 9 or 10 grams of protein. So
Yeah.
it's to build some of those stuff in, some of those things in. I like the idea of planning the protein in advance, and then I find often that when I add in the other items around that protein to complete a meal, that I'm usually over my protein amount. And I have to back off some things in order to make sure I have enough carbohydrates and fats. So it's interesting how that works, where you can also, when you become acutely aware of your protein, where you can find it from other sources as well that you might not immediately think protein comes from, like a bagel, right? So yeah, that's that's the answer to my question anyway.
Excellent. And Greg, is there anything you want to touch on that?
I would say maybe a few things. One is you mentioned kind of lunch out versus, bringing food to work and things like that. I've found that, at least for me, it's been a real game changer for me to do what Craig was saying, which is uh,
Yeah.
plan out and log food either the night before or the morning of, essentially as I'm like preparing the food. And as part of that, it helps me, kind of plan things out. It helps me kind of see where I'm at and, kind of be strategic about it. At least for me, it's hard to like do some of that stuff on the fly in terms of trying to keep track of like, where am I and what am I going to do now versus later and so on. So it's just easier for me to kind of plan it all out at one time, or at least in my case, probably plan out everything leading up to dinner, and then, maybe leave dinner as a little bit of as the spirit, guides kind of a thing in terms of like what I'm feeling. But at least the rest of the day, I kind of know where I'm at and what I'm doing. And then the other thing that I've found is that, at least for me, for trying to eat out at, say, lunch, it's actually really hard often to find high protein options at a lot of places, just because like the quantity of the protein and things like that relative to everything else in the dish is actually not that high. Because, for a lot of people in society and so on, like they're not optimizing for as high of a protein intake as we are. And so it's like often those dishes I've found to be more carb heavy or more fat heavy and so on. And so it actually makes it very hard for me to hit my protein target if I'm relying on, say, eating out for lunch. And it makes it even harder for me to hit it if I then also don't have other protein rich snacks in between. So if I'm just like, because again, the stuff that you're going to find around the office or the stuff that you're going to find kind of like readily available is definitely not going to be super high, it will have some protein, like don't get me wrong, like maybe there'll be like, something in the break room, which is like, a Cliff Bar or something like that, which has a decent amount of protein, but it also is like much more carb and fat heavy than it is, protein, and so on. So between snacks and between lunch, if I kind of just leave all of that to like whatever happens to be available, or, where I happen to go that day, um, it's very unlikely that I'm going to like actually be successful with the day. And so that's why I've kind of found to zero in on that, or at least if I know that I'm going to be eating out for lunch, going back to what I said earlier, then I'll be much more thoughtful about like, well, how do I want to do things with breakfast? How do I want to do things with snacks? How do I want to make sure that then I have like a good dinner, because maybe lunch was like not as protein rich. On the specific kind of question about other foods, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe similar to some of what was shared, I have found that, if you really want to kind of pack the protein in, combining Greek yogurt with protein powder, kind of mixing those two things together, and then like adding a bit of fruit or something like, blueberries or whatever, is really good. I've grown to like cottage cheese a little bit more than I did use previously. I would say that like kind of my go-tos are probably more like deli meats. We bought an air fryer a while back, and that's been huge. It's just super easy to just throw some like chicken breast or fish or whatever in the air fryer. And
Have you
it's
used
like,
the recipe book yet, Greg? The air fryer recipe book?
I have not. I
No.
have not. I I commend Craig on like everything that he does with the recipe books. I will admit I have not availed myself of those resources nearly as much as I
A
probably
lot of it
could.
is time, isn't it? Because obviously, first you've got to buy the ingredients, then you've got to put it all together, and yeah, I get all
Yeah. I mean, just from a purely time standpoint, I mean, this is the other
that. Yeah,
thing. I mean, it's like I think in the past I kind of had this mental model that like making my lunch and things like that needed to be super time intensive. And it is there's an element of some time in terms of like packing a lunch in the morning or something like that. But just to be honest, there's also time involved in having to like leave the office, get to some place for lunch, stand in line, do a bunch of stuff, bring it back, like whatever. And so unless that's serving some other business, networking, I don't know, social element for you, like the amount of time that
yeah,
you're going to spend just like literally going out to lunch somewhere and then getting back versus the amount of time that it takes to actually make a lunch and bring it with you. Like my guess is that you're probably better off just packing a lunch
Mm.
and bring it with you if you really feel like you're time starved, if you will, like within your day. Um, but yeah, so anyway, so I'll with the air fryer and things like that, like I'll often just keep things like super simple, right? You know, it's just
me
like
too. Yeah,
I'm gonna like I'll put salmon in, I'll put like a little bit of mustard or something, brown mustard on it or something like that. It cooks for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and it's done. And it's just like ready to eat. I haven't like really done much with it. I'll also just do stuff where again, like you could make it more elaborate than this, but like I'll just do like turkey breast inside of a tortilla as a wrap and just measure out and make sure that I'm getting plenty of, turkey breast, for example. Maybe I'll put some mustard on it. It's not like super glamorous, but like it's super fast to make and it's got plenty of protein. It's got a bit of carbs, kind of mixed in like with the tortilla and so on. And, that works for me. As we've been like recording this, like I happen to be a big fan of different like kind of protein bars, and that kind of thing. So I'll kind of utilize those particularly as snacks, or if I'm kind of in a bit of a hurry. There's a particular brand of it's a more of a plant-based protein shake called Kachava.
Mm.
It's a bit expensive, but I do that every morning and find that it has a nice blend of, kind of protein along with carbs and some other stuff, fiber and whatnot. So I think my main kind of point on this is that like making meals on your own and B kind of hitting, protein targets doesn't necessarily have to be hard. It doesn't need to be super time consuming and so on. Like you just have to be a little bit mindful about it and do a little bit of planning and a little bit of prep, and it can go a long way.
You
yeah,
bring up a good
absolutely.
point, Greg.
Thanks,
Oh,
Greg.
I'm sorry.
Go on, John.
Oh, yeah. Greg brings up a great point I think, a lot of times I remember in the beginning of my journey, I was thinking that I had to cook these elaborate recipes and really when it boils down to it, you can, if you find what works for you, work in a protein shake, work in a protein bar, maybe it's just a piece of fish with a topping, and when you spread these things out over the course of the day, it becomes a heck of a lot less overwhelming than saying I need every single meal I need to create some elaborate recipe. So if you can think in terms of simplicity first, right, and especially because everybody's time starved, that's going to get you in the best possible position to succeed with getting your protein in.
Yeah, and make the most of your resources as well, guys. If you've got access to the new evidence-based coaching, the recent update with the widgets on the screen, they're all in there. There's recipe books, there's ideas, there's a like a snacking guide, protein snacks. Make the use of them. One thing that I do quite often is, let's say if myself or my wife are making dinner on a night, doing that little bit of extra for the next day or the day after. You know, I wouldn't recommend keeping food for longer than 3 days. Obviously, it's going to grow bacteria, especially things like rice. You know, we can't re-eat, we can only re-eat rice a certain amount of times before, you know, it becomes, it can be harmful to us, you know, it can cause food poisoning. But like on a dinner, you know, if your wife's making the meals on an evening for dinner, get her to make a little bit more for the next day to take into work. You know, I found that really helps as well. But again, I know I mentioned to Greg about the air fryer recipe book. There's a slow cooker high protein recipe book as well, which is awesome. I've used quite a few recipes out of that. I do usually tweak a lot of the recipes, which you guys can as well. But the main thing is just to take away ideas from them. You know, especially there's one called the high protein recipe book, which is full of great, you know, good quality meals there, which are very high in protein as well. And the thing is, when time isn't, like John mentioned, when time isn't on your side, you sometimes haven't got the time to follow a recipe. But like I said, if you're checking through the resources and things and you see something, just put your spin on it. But also try and be creative. I see it so many times where people, what they're doing, they're eating chicken and rice and like some form of veg. They're not adding any sauces or they're not any different ingredients. It's going to give it a bit of flavor. And you'll feel like you're on a diet. And we don't want that. You know, there's no need to feel like you're on a diet. You can eat whatever you want within reason, as long as you're within the calorie goal over the day. So try and make your meals, be creative with them. You know, think of different like stir fries and things like that, which are very quick and simple to make. You can pack a lot of protein, whether it's chicken and shrimp, and maybe crack a few eggs in, and it's like a Chinese style, you know, bit of soy sauce or whatever, you know. But what I will do after this podcast at the end, I'm going to post a copy of the notes, which number one, it gives you some information on the benefits of protein and why we use a high protein diet with our clients, but also some ideas of protein sources as well. It's going to really help. But ultimately, my advice to everyone, and it will always be, is plan. You know, if you plan ahead, you're going to get closer, you're going to be more consistent, and you're going to make quicker progress as well. Anything on that, Greg? Anything else, or should we
No,
wrap
I'll
that?
just, yeah, I'm a big, I'll for sure second the idea of planning. You know, it's like, I mean, I say this, I feel like I say this on maybe every one of these episodes,
I do.
that like a little planning goes a long way. And like for sure that is like true as it relates to protein. I mean, one other just quick thought for people, if it's helpful. I mentioned kind of protein shakes or kind of protein drinks. You know, for those people who have memberships at Costco and stuff like that, they do have a variety of things there in terms of either Muscle Milk or Core Power or Fairlife or things like that, where like if you're just really on the run and things like that, you can just like bring one of those with you, and depending on the product, it can have I mean, like Ensure, you know, it's like, you know, these kinds of things. Anyway, like they'll have anywhere from 20 grams to sometimes about 42 grams, you know, in them. My wife's a huge fan in particular of Core Power just because she's very sensitive to like the taste and texture and consistency of things. And for her, like that just tastes like chocolate milk, kind of to her. But a given bottle, depending on the type you get, is either 26 grams or 42 grams for Core Power. And so it's just a way that you can, you know, kind of get that, you know, on the run, and, you know, it's like super easy to just buy a pack and have it with you. So, you know, again, just figure out like kind of what works for you, and, you know, how you want to balance, you know, convenience versus, you know, preparing a meal and things like that. But, you know, to Craig's point, I don't think that you need to have everything be like, you know, simple and no flavor and whatever, you know, because you don't want to feel like you're on the diet. On the flip side, like we've been talking about, not every one of these meals or snacks needs to be like a work of art and amazing and
No.
whatever. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, just having one of these protein drinks or a protein bar, or, you know, whether it's yogurt or whatever in a container that you bring with you, you know, it's like super fast and simple, but it's going to help you hit your protein target, which can then help you hit these like broader goals that you have for your health and your with your weight loss and things like that. So
Excellent. Excellent, Greg. Thank you. Anything else from you, John?
No, just along the same lines. I really, you know, the in summary, a little planning goes a long way, and I think that resonates with everyone in this group. It's not by accident. This is a high performing group of executives, right? And it's not by accident that they were able to achieve their own business goals, right? So why would it be anything different in your nutrition? Why would it be anything different in your exercise? You want to, yeah, a little bit of planning and, you know, a little bit of, you know, forward information goes a long way in anything, right? So.
Yeah, of course it does. It's all about standards, isn't it? Holding yourself to high standards. And excellent. So, guys, yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully this was helpful. Again, if there's anything that you would like us to discuss on any of our podcasts, you can either comment under the podcast or when we post it, or you can send one of us a private message and we'll ensure, you know, we'll make sure that we do cover it. We will get to everyone. But again, we're always looking for different ideas, things to cover, especially things that you may be struggling with, which is going to help. And we don't necessarily have to say who the question was off. You know, if you want to remain anonymous, that's absolutely fine. We understand that. We respect that. But you know, we want to keep this podcast going because we want, you know, to help you. Our goal is to help you get incredible results throughout the journey. So again, give this podcast a like as well. If you don't mind, it will help reach more people. And thank you very much. Thanks, guys.